Paramount and TKO striking a landmark 7-year, $1.1 billion a year agreement, making Paramount Plus the exclusive U.S. home for the UFC.
That's crazy. That's $120 a year. You could watch every UFC pay-per-view.
After over 30 years of the pay-per-view model, the UFC just changed the fight business forever.
2 UFC pay-per-views is like $140. This sport is going to go fucking hypernova.
Now, I'm sure everybody's been paying $79.99 for every main UFC event and not just illegally streaming it on a piracy website. I mean, none of us want to go to jail.
Not go to jail. Go to federal prison.
But that's no longer an issue, because now every UFC event will be streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus, completely eliminating the pay-per-view model for subscribers. The UFC continues to make more revenue year over year, but many are saying that this deal could help it reach new levels of popularity like never before. And a lot of this has to do with Gen Z, the generation least likely to pay for pay-per-view. But it's important to show how we got here, so let's go all the way back to UFC 1. The original premise of the UFC was simple. What happens if you take fighters from completely different disciplines and just make them fight? Boxers, kickboxers, jiu-jitsu practitioners, wrestlers, karate guys. The broadcast hyped it as the ultimate fight with no rules.
Be forewarned, there are no rules.
And then, in about 26 seconds, kickboxer Gerard Gordeau kicked Taylor Tooley, a sumo wrestler, in the face, knocking his teeth out onto the mat, making the UFC say, okay, maybe some rules, like mouth guards. Regardless, it was the coolest thing ever. But that chaos almost killed the UFC.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
In the years that followed, politicians tried to ban it, networks would not touch it, and the sport was labeled as human cockfighting.
There was people knocking them other down, sitting on top of them and smashing them in the face. It was terrible.
How terrible, oh no!
So the UFC cleaned itself up. Rules were added, weight classes were introduced, and athletic commissions got involved. This allowed it to become legitimate and start creating stars. Early on, you had Hoist Gracie, Ken Shamrock, Bas Rutten, and Dan Severn. And then later, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, and Randy Couture. The Spike TV era helped launch things into the mainstream with Forrest Griffin, GSP, and BJ Penn. The 2010s created global icons like Anderson Silva, John Jones, and Ronda Rousey. Then the McGregor era hit. Conor, Nate Diaz, Khabib, where the UFC really became a total cultural entity. And the machine never slowed down. Alex Pereira, Islam Makhachev, Ilia Topuria, Sean O'Malley, the league keeps creating stars. Very few sports organizations can show a chart like this. 1 decade, nearly uninterrupted growth. From a niche sport to pulling in over $1 billion a year. And the reason why it's about to level up again? The audience has changed. More specifically, a new generation has found UFC. And to understand why the Paramount deal makes so much sense, you just have to understand one thing about Gen Z. They don't do pay-per-view, and they don't give a fuck about piracy. And yeah, $80 for one night of fights is insane. Studies show that more than 3 out of 4 Gen Z users engage in online piracy because they're incredibly price sensitive and friction averse. If content is locked behind a massive one-time paywall, basically, they're gonna pirate it. And when it comes to Gen Z and piracy, it's not meant to be a big statement or an act of rebellion. It's literally just cheaper and more convenient. I think most companies have figured this out, but when it comes to the anti-piracy issue, the whole you wouldn't download a car ethical argument is a waste of time. Nobody's having some internal moral struggle with themselves because they found a way to watch Disney Plus content without paying Mickey Mouse $16. That said, Gen Z isn't entirely anti-paying. They just don't want to get gouged and they don't want friction. Give them an $80 pay-per-view and piracy is the default. Give them a cheap, frictionless subscription like Paramount Plus to watch all their fights and they will happily pay a reasonable price every month.
The double pay window, meaning you have to buy ESPN and then you have to pay for a number to...
We're paying $80 a month, I think.
Right. Here, just think of this. If you take their ad platform as it stands now, so you're going to sign up for Paramount Plus with ads, it's $8. It's $8 and you get all of the UFC included.
It's worth the cost just for the lack of friction. Just like Spotify's worth it because it takes all your music, puts it on one platform, and you don't have to go search it out individually everywhere else. Gen Z's already been watching UFC, but now the company's actually aligned its business model with how they actually pay for content. Now, to be clear, when it comes to young adults, the UFC isn't bigger than the NFL or MLB. Surveys show that about 53% of Gen Z identify as NFL fans. fans, 35% as MLB fans, and 31% as UFC fans. But that gap needs context because the MLB and NFL have been around everywhere forever. Free TV, local broadcasts, decades of exposure. The UFC did not have that luxury. For most of its modern existence, the UFC has lived behind one of the heaviest paywalls in all of sports. And despite that paywall, it's still killing it with young people, all things considered. Plus, Gen Z's overall interest in baseball has been slipping. MLB still ranks higher overall, but it's struggling to connect with younger audiences. Meanwhile, the UFC has grown by living online, through fighters and rivalries and moments spread organically. Short clips, knockouts, trash talk, press conferences, controversy, violence, and chaos, all funneled right into social media without any filter. And Dana White, love him or hate him, has made the policy very clear for fighters.
Free speech. And control what people say. I don't tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes.
Say what you want, even if he disagrees with it. It may earn you more fans, or it may earn you more haters, but it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, more people are either going to want to see you win or get knocked out. And this ties into why the UFC has done such a good job appealing to young men. There's a pretty huge Gen Z divide. You've probably seen this study cited before, but the ideology gap between Gen Z men and Gen Z women is more polarized than ever before. That divide is not a good thing, but there's no denying that the UFC has intentionally made itself more appealing to young men than any other companies, simply by embracing the controversy that scares other corporations. I think the Overton window has shifted in the last couple of years, mainly because people got really fatigued from that pre-COVID and COVID era political correctness that really just took over everything. Movies, TV, Hollywood, corporations, college and workplaces, even other sports leagues. When you look back and really think about it, the UFC was one of the only corporations to reject all of it, even during its peak. And it definitely built a lot of loyalty from its fans because of it, and it makes sense. While baseball teams were politely debating over whether players should have to wear gay pride patches, and the NFL was introducing male cheerleaders, the UFC took a different approach.
So Donald Trump making his way to watch the UFC.
Let's go, Brandon!
COVID, though, and you guys were the sport that kept us going.
What are we gonna go and hide in our houses and possibly die? It's just, I'm not built that way.
Go your coach, you
Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want and they can believe whatever they want.
All you filthy animals suck! I got one thing to say! Tyrone Woodley, I'm coming for you!
You could probably put together a 3-hour video essay on the culture war side of this, but if you can't see why this stuff is more appealing to Gen Z guys when compared to all the stuff every other corporation was pushing for a while, I'm probably not going to be able to convince you. For decades, the UFC succeeded despite its distribution model. Now the fights will just be there, inside a cheap, all-access subscription. And analysts are nearly unanimous that this will massively expand the UFC's audience. Morgan Stanley called the deal a highly successful rights renewal, saying it will meaningfully broaden the UFC's reach by moving major events out from behind paywalls and onto mainstream platforms. JP Morgan went even further, noting that eliminating pay-per-view will substantially widen the reach of UFC's biggest events. Instead of relying on a handful of massive pay-per-view nights, the league now locks in over $1.1 billion in guaranteed annual revenue, with additional upside from advertisements, sponsors, ticket sales, merch, sports betting partnerships, and international media rights outside of the US. Analysts estimate this deal alone pushes the UFC's valuation into the $15 to $16 billion range. Pay-per-view built the UFC, but streaming will finally let it scale. And it's about time, because MMA is the best sport out there, in my opinion. And maybe, just maybe, with all that extra money, Dana White can start paying his fighters fairly.
Federal fucking prison.
But next, if you want to learn why online piracy completely nuked Hollywood and movies, you can watch my previous video on it. I'll link it here.